I'm an ex-Outlaw Motorcycle Club member and I just watched the movie 1% and I am going to give you my review on it. This will be my second one. All right, first thing, it is an Aussie movie. It was a bit of a hard watch. There was a couple of times where I wanted to turn it off. Just the way it's filmed. The acting itself isn't that bad. The dialogue, it's an Aussie movie. It's not that bad. The acting was pretty good, actually. You know, they did well for what they had to work with. But I'm sure the question that you want answered is it like being in a real bike club? The whole movie was pretty much depicted around two things. Spoiler alert. One, the president raping guys. And two, the women really running the club. I would be lying if I say that I've never ever heard the rumour of a guy raping a guy because it makes him feel like a king. And it makes the other guy feel low as hell. And you can imagine the psychological warfare that would play on somebody. I will say where there's usually smoke, there is fire. However, I never witnessed it. And yeah, that's a tough one. Do I think it probably happened? The underworld's been around for a very, very long time. There are some twisted individuals in the underworld. So, I don't know, I'd like to think it didn't happen, but the odds of probabilities, All right, the second undertone was that the old ladies, the wives of the president, run the club. I have seen situations where they definitely do pull strings, but not to the extent that they do in this movie. And sometimes, yes, they do overstep and think that they run the club, but this movie was way far-fetched in that regard. Definitely very, very far-fetched. One thing that was cool that was in the movie that is 100% true was at the start, one of the old ladies takes the drugs off one of the other girls and says, that is illegal in this club. You are not to do that here. You can put it up your ass, you can put it up your nose, anywhere else in this club, talking about ecstasy, but you do not do that here. That is true. Just after that scene, one of the girls is caught doing heroin. She gets kicked out, and the guy that gave it to her also gets kicked out of the club. That is also true. Heroin is also not allowed. Once the first half of the movie is over and you've gritted your teeth just to get through it, it starts to get a little bit more action-packed, and they have a big shootout and everything, and the president makes sure every single person is wearing their colours. This absolutely would never, ever happen. I went and did something in my first couple of weeks when I was in a club, and I would just happen to be wearing a supporter top, and I got my ass reamed. You are never, ever to wear club gear when you're going to do something naughty. That just would never, ever happen. And if you do, you get in trouble. And no, I didn't get reamed like I was talking about earlier in this video. One thing I did find very, very interesting about this movie is the first president, before something happens to him, was trying to get the club to go legit. And he had plans, he was getting stuff happening, so that way they didn't have to watch over their backs anymore. This is something that me and a lot of the brothers always talked about doing. Specifically, we were like, geez, there's so many members. Imagine if we all threw in $30 a week each and started buying houses. Within a couple of years, you know, how many houses could we own and how much rent could we be receiving, and we all wouldn't have to work anymore? How cool would that be? Unfortunately, people come, people go, and there is always people that don't want to be a part of it and wreck it just because they love fighting, like the president in the movie. That always fighting for power, that always fighting for control and the backstabbing, it does happen. It really, really does. To different extents. Sometimes, yes, like that. Sometimes, no, to little bickering and stuff like that. But it definitely does happen. So all up, for an Aussie movie, it probably wasn't bad. Was it a hard watch? Yes, it was a very hard watch. Some things were right. Some things were wrong. All in all, was entertaining if you're going to be hungover on a Sunday. Another thing that was true in this movie, and it was also true in Sons of Anarchy, by the way, was that they always had somebody a little bit slow hanging around. Just about every chapter I've ever been to has. And it's not like they adopt them or anything like that. It's that, you know, they have an event, somebody will come down, they'll feel not judged, they'll feel like, they're part of the crew, and they end up just hanging around. And they're usually treated very, very well. Of course, in that environment, there are members that don't think that they should be around, and they're not that nice to them. But for the most part, generally speaking, everybody treats them fantastic. Another part that isn't true, just like Sons of Anarchy as well, is that usually in a chapter, there's only 1 or 2 people that don't have a car and ride absolutely everywhere. While yes, some people love to ride a lot, some people like to ride on the weekends in perfect weather, everybody in a motorcycle club does ride. It's just the levels vary. Some people used to joke around that MC stands for motor car.